In this video, I'll be counting down the best apps that you need to download before your first Europe trip, based on a decade of frequent travel and living there. And I'll be teaching you their best tricks as well. Now, in case you're new here, hi, I'm Christina from happytowander.com. And this channel is all about practical travel tips from someone who's been there, done that. So be sure to like and subscribe if that sounds like your kind of thing. Now, the last time I made this video was actually 5 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. These days, I pretty much just use a handful of apps to cover me on all aspects of travel, and I've really honed in on my favorites. So here we go. We'll start with a newer one that I've added to my arsenal fairly recently. And this app is really ideal for people who are staying in rental apartments or alternative types of accommodation that don't have a front desk where you can leave your bags. And this app is known as Bounce. Long story short, Bounce partners with different businesses around a destination. So places like convenience stores, hotels, and places that can keep your bag securely for a fee of about $5 to $10 per day, which is really, really reasonable. I've personally used it a few times now and find it super convenient. All you need to do is log onto the app, and then you can see all the different businesses that can stow your bag along with how much it's going to cost you. And then you just book it through the app, and when you go there, you show them a code, they'll take your bag and give you a ticket to come back and grab your bag. And then you can be on your merry way to frolic around the city. Now, I do have to say a lot of major train stations in Europe will have lockers, but the trouble is not all train stations have them, and sometimes they can actually be very, very expensive. So if you're looking for an alternative and you don't have access to regular bag storage like with a hotel, then this is definitely a really good option. Next, let's move on to the best apps for ordering taxis and rides. Because as I often say, using an app is probably one of the best ways to avoid getting scammed, especially when you're new to a city. Unfortunately, the best app for you to download might actually depend on where specifically in Europe you're going, but generally speaking, the most popular apps for this purpose include FreeNow, Uber, and Bolt. All of these work in more or less the same way. You enter your destination and your pickup point, and then it'll either give you an estimation of your fare or just your fare up front so you can pay within the app. Having a paper trail like this is really great because then you know there's not going to be any sneaky tricks, taking super long-winded routes, or maybe fixing the meter, anything like that. You know exactly what you're going to pay up front, and this is honestly just much better than trying to get a traditional taxi because you never know, and there's often language barriers in that case as well. But how do you decide which one to download? Well, a very easy shortcut to figuring out which taxi app is the most popular in your destination is simply hopping on Google Maps and then typing in 2 random points in the city. Then when you look at the different options, you'll see that there's the usual ones like driving, public transport, walking, but usually there is also going to be an additional tab for ordering a taxi as well. And when you click that tab, a lot of the time it's going to show you, hey, you can order a taxi through Bolt, you can order a taxi through Uber. It'll have the different options. So that's a really great way to tell which apps are the most predominant ones in your destination. A bonus tip here as well is if you are new to any of these apps and you're downloading and using them for the first time, do keep an eye out for first-timer discounts because a lot of the time these apps will try to incentivize newcomers by offering some kind of discount code or even a discounted first few rides. So before you commit to a new rideshare service or app, definitely Google first-timer discount, first-timer voucher. A lot of the time there will be different options for you. Next is an app that I use constantly for transport because when you're traveling around Europe, there really are so many different options in terms of modes of transport. So you can go by train, by bus, by plane, and it can often be quite a headache to compare the different options, which is why I love using Omio. This app allows you to search, compare, and book different modes of transport. So you just enter point A to point B, wherever you're trying to go, and it's going to show you various transport modes. And their interface is super user-friendly, so you can search by things like best price, what's quickest, and also what they personally recommend. Granted, they do sometimes charge a service fee, but for me personally, I do find that's worth it just because of the time that you save rather than going on all these different websites trying to find the best mode of transport. You can actually search everything in one place. So for me, that's worth it. But if this extra cost is a concern for you, as I always say, booking directly with the transport operator is always going to give you the best price and also the best customer service if anything goes wrong. So there's really nothing stopping you from using Omio as a search engine and then booking directly. But I will say if you are booking quite a complicated trip that maybe spans across multiple destinations, multiple modes of transport, it can be really handy to just have all those tickets in one place. So for me, that small service fee is worth it for that convenience, but at the end of the day, you can decide what's best for you. If you want a discount off your first trip, be sure to DM me on Instagram and I can send you my referral code. Now, Omio would be my general recommendation for Europe travel, but depending on where you're going, there might actually be more local apps that are better suited for your purpose. So for instance, if you're planning on traveling quite a lot in the UK, I personally really like Trainline for that because it does a similar thing. It compares all the options across train companies and often bus companies as well, but it also allows you to keep certain things like a rail card or discount passes right within the app, which can be really handy because when you have these cards, you can actually save like 1/3 off of the entire fare. And usually they'll ask to see a rail card anytime they check your ticket. So having both of those in one place can be really, really handy. And overall, if you aren't visiting too many countries, maybe just one or two, it might make sense for you to download the actual train operators app. So the vast majority of them do have their own apps these days. Like with Germany, for instance, they have the Deutsche Bahn app. And so if you're not visiting too many different countries, then booking directly through their app would probably be the best move. Now, with all these app recommendations, something to keep in mind is, of course, that you will need mobile data to access all of these apps and use them properly once you get to Europe. And by far the most convenient way to do that is getting an eSIM in advance of your trip. So on that note, this week's video is sponsored by our next app recommendation, which is Airlo, my go-to eSIM provider that has options for over 200 countries and regions around the world, including, of course, Europe. These days, I get an Airlo eSIM before every single trip I take abroad, just because I can set it up before I leave and never have to stress about whether or not I'm going to have internet once I arrive. And because eSIM stands for embedded SIM, meaning it is pre-installed on your device and works 100% digitally, that means you can access data and connect to local telecom networks without needing to switch physical SIM cards in and out, which, trust me, is so much simpler. Once you download the Airlo app, you can easily browse and choose your eSIM package of choice. Then you can follow their instructions to set it up in advance, allowing for instant access as soon as you land that is way more affordable than roaming. And you can easily use the app to monitor your usage and top up as needed as well. So if you want to check them out, you can scan this QR code here and use the code HAPPY3 for a discount on your first purchase. You can check out my complete Airlo guide for step-by-step instructions on how to set it all up as well. So thanks again to Airlo for sponsoring this week's video. Now let's move on to our next app, which is great if you enjoy booking activities and tours and experiences when you travel. I personally find this app is really great for browsing all the different options once you get to a destination, and it also keeps all your tickets and activities in one place as well. And this app is called Get Your Guide. Get Your Guide essentially functions as a tour aggregator, so they do offer and organize some experiences of their own, but for the most part, essentially it's a marketplace for lots of different tour operators and experiences. So instead of having to search up individual websites, you can just shop through them and see a bunch of the options at a glance. And they have so much on here, from walking tours and skip the line experiences, all the way to experiential activities like cooking classes or photo shoots. And again, being able to browse a bunch of activities at once is really handy if you're trying to save time. That said, not all the activities on here are winners. I will say again that Get Your Guide is just a marketplace, so there are probably some activities on there that are better than others. That's why it's really important to be vetting reviews in advance and also making use of all the filters that they have on the app as well. For me personally, there are certain activities I know I'm just not interested in, things like airport transfers or any of those like digital exploration games on your phone. Like, I usually just filter it based on tours and experiences, and that way I can really zone in on the things that I'm actually interested in. But one thing that's really cool about Get Your Guide that not a lot of people know about is they actually offer price matching. So if you find that exact experience from that company for the same dates and you find it somewhere else for a lower price, they'll actually refund you the difference. So you kind of have a best price guarantee in that sense. So definitely take advantage of that if you're shopping around. Now, the next app is one that I used to love so much and endorse wholeheartedly, but unfortunately, it's kind of gone downhill a little bit. So I will provide some alternatives, but I do want to introduce you to the general concept because it has saved so many trips for me and it has saved a lot of friendships as well. And that's because this app really takes the guesswork out of splitting costs for a trip, especially if you do a lot of group travel. Let's say one person paid for the flights, one person paid for the hotels, and at the end, you're just doing all this math and it's not a fun use of your time. So an app that you can use to kind of diffuse this tension is known as Splitwise. So long story short, this is a finance app that allows you to input and split expenses really easily. So let's say you're on a trip and you and your friend are taking turns paying for dinner. You can just put those numbers in. You can even specify percentages, or if you want to be petty and say, hey, you had more drinks than I did, you can do custom amounts as well. And then it'll do all the math for you at the end and tell you who owes who what. And I have to say, I used to love this app so much. The free version was perfect for my needs. I used it on every trip, and I still do use it, but it's gotten quite annoying in the past few years just because they, of course, don't make much money off of their free version, and so they really try their hardest to get you to subscribe to their pro version, and the way that they're doing that these days is they're really limiting the features that you can access through the free app. So these days, you don't even have unlimited expenses, and so you can only input 4 expenses per day, which is not very much when you're traveling. And it also does some annoying things like make you wait out a countdown timer when you start adding more and more expenses throughout the day, which I'm obviously not a huge fan of. That said, I do still use Splitwise because this is the app that's the most popular with my friend group, and it can be tough trying to talk people into downloading a separate app. So if I am doing a long trip or I know I'm going to use Splitwise quite a lot, in a month I'll just pay for a 1-month subscription, which is usually around $4 Canadian. So it's not going to break the bank, but it's just a bit annoying because it used to be so good and so free. But I get it, they have to make money somehow. But if you want a free app that does pretty much the same thing, luckily a lot of people have been building their own versions. So based on my research, TriCount and Splid tend to be the 2 most popular alternatives. Ultimately, which one you choose should really just depend on which app is popular with your own friend group or your own travel mates. But I will say another option is if you're dealing with someone who doesn't want to download a whole new app to split costs, there actually is one called WeSplit that doesn't require everyone to make an account. You can actually just input their name and input their expenses on their behalf, and then it'll still do the math. So that might be a good alternative if you've got any friends who are resistant to downloading a new app. That's a way you can kind of get around it. Now, in terms of travel planning apps, there are honestly so many out there, but honestly, the best all-in-one app that I've been able to find is called Wanderlog. Not only does this app let you keep all your different bookings and reservations in one place, it's also a super user-friendly itinerary planning tool that syncs up to a lot of different attractions and is preloaded with really important bits of information like opening hours and things like that. So it's a really good starting point for planning an itinerary, and it's very, very easy to use. What's cool is you can also share itineraries with friends. So if you're doing a group trip, you can collaborate on an itinerary and all be able to contribute that way. And there's quite a few good features as well, like bill splitting, packing list generation, and some pro features like being able to export your Wanderlog maps into Google Maps. And they do have a bit of a community on there too, so you can look at other people's itineraries and kind of get ideas through that. All in all, if you're super type A and you'd like for everything to be very organized for a trip, first, let me know in the comments by typing type A because I am one of those people, but also this is probably an app that you'll enjoy very much. It's definitely not perfect. You still do need to do your own research because I've personally found a lot of the attractions that they recommend are, of course, the most popular ones, and so you do tend to get quite a touristy itinerary out of it. But like I said, as a starting point, it's really solid. Next, for finding accommodation, there's honestly just one app that I pull out every single time, and it's just because I find it super user-friendly and it's a really good base for finding accommodations in most European destinations, and that's Booking.com. Long story short, this app allows you to enter your destination, your travel dates, and then it'll show you all the different accommodations with plenty of helpful filters, like you can organize based on rating, by accommodation type, and you can even see all the different options on a map so you can kind of figure out what's going to be close to your main points of interest. I especially like that they reward loyalty, so if you're booking a lot of smaller properties that aren't chain hotels, a lot of the time it's hard to get any kind of loyalty bonus because you're just jumping from hotel chain to hotel chain or even independent boutique properties. But with Booking.com, you rack up different points as you book through them, so over time you can really accumulate a lot of cool perks. Like I usually get minimum 10% discount these days because I book so much through them, and in the past I've also scored really cool things like free room upgrades, so it's definitely worth giving it a try, especially for Europe where I find that there's a lot of smaller independent properties and the selection on Booking.com is actually really good. If you want a step-by-step tutorial on how I personally find the best properties every time, you can check out this video here. Now that said, in my opinion, the real strength of this app is its ability to aggregate all these different properties and keep all your bookings in one place. So if you're planning a really big trip with plenty of destinations and accommodations, or let's just say you're planning multiple trips, I find it is helpful to have all your bookings in one place rather than scattered around in your inbox. But as I always say, if you're looking for the best possible deal and the best possible customer service, really the thing to do is book directly. So if that's important to you and you don't mind having the bookings kind of floating around in your inbox, then definitely use Booking.com as a starting point. I really think it's the best tool for that. Do your research, and then once you find the one you want, then you can book directly for probably the best price and also the most robust support in case anything goes wrong. Something I'll note though is that if you are loyal to a particular hotel chain, let's say you like to collect points from Hilton or Marriott, then I will say it is very worth downloading their apps as well, because a lot of the time they'll have their own discounts and offers within the app, and you can have a look at your point statuses and things like that. So I personally use the Hilton Honors app quite a bit as well, in addition to Booking.com. Next, if you want to avoid pricey currency conversion fees and also ATM withdrawal fees, then one app you absolutely need to download is Wise. I don't want to get too technical in the explanation of what they do, but long story short, Wise is a fintech company that allows you to hold money in over 40 different currencies and also exchange them for the mid-market rate, which allows you to save quite a bit of money when you travel. So let's say you're from Canada and you want to send some money over to the UK. Wise allows you to do that really seamlessly online by essentially providing you with banking details for each of these countries. More practical for travel though, you can actually get physical and digital payment cards that you can use abroad, which allows you to withdraw money without any additional ATM fees and also allow you to pay abroad without any extra fees like your bank might charge you. This is one of my most used apps, not just for travel, but also day-to-day life, because I actually use Wise to manage all my business finances as well. Making an account is free, ordering a card is free, and if you use my referral link below, you can actually get your first transfer for free as well. What's awesome is you can even sync it up to your digital wallet so you can use it pretty much right away. And really, if you travel often, I think this is just such a good app to have. Especially if you have friends abroad and you need to transfer money between each other, it basically makes it as easy as if you were in the same country. So really good. And a lot of the time the transfers are quite quick as well. Now, if Wise isn't an option for you, I actually have used Revolut before in the past, and I really enjoyed them. They do pretty much the exact same thing, but I can't really vouch for what they've been like for the past few years, just because ever since I moved away from Germany, I haven't been able to use Revolut. So I'm not sure what the quality is like now, but I did use them very happily for several years. If you have any experience to share with Revolut, feel free to comment below. Now, next is an app that I use on pretty much every trip when I'm traveling somewhere I don't speak the language. And it has gotten so good in the past few years that I really don't see any need to download any other translation app, because this one just does it all. And I am, of course, talking about Google Translate. This app is so easy to use and of course lets you translate between over 200 different languages. The most basic use of this is typing in text to translate or copy and pasting text to translate. But they have tons of different modes now. For instance, they have a microphone mode, so you can just speak into it and it'll transcribe what you're saying and then translate it. They also have a conversation mode that's great if you are trying to translate a conversation between you and someone else. You can speak into one microphone button and then they'll speak into the next one and it'll just keep translating it back and forth, which I think is so cool. And they also have a camera mode as well that scans different pictures like signs and menus. So it makes it super simple to translate images. And you can even upload images from your camera roll as well. Another great feature is you can actually save languages for offline use. So let's say you arrive somewhere and you don't necessarily know if you'll have service or data, then you can download a language for offline use so that you can continue to translate things even when you don't have internet, which is so useful and so great if you have anxiety around not having internet like I do. I will say though, I love Google Translate for travel and I think it is perfect for that purpose. But if you are living somewhere long term and you're trying to translate longer form things like documents, then another app that I used a lot when I was in Germany is called DeepL or DeepL. And I do think this app is actually much better at catching nuances and idioms and professional jargon as well. So I find that Google Translate is great for small things like menus and signs where it's okay for it to be a little bit literal. But if you need to translate something that's longer form, a lot of the time DeepL will give you a much more accurate result. So overall, it is a smarter option, but that said, their selection of languages is only about 33 at the moment, I think, compared to Google Translate's over 200. And finally, we have the must-have travel app for Europe, and I'm sure you already have this one downloaded on your phone. If not, make sure you download it and also listen up because I'm going to share some tricks that I think a lot of people don't know exist. And of course, I am talking about Google Maps. This to me is the ultimate travel navigation app. As you probably know already, you can enter your departure point and your destination, and it'll show you all the different possible routes that you can take along different modes of transport, including walking, driving, public transport, cycling, and sometimes even taxis, as I said before. But it's capable of doing a lot more than that. So here are some of my favorite things to do with Google Maps. First, I love saving places that I come across in my research that I'm interested in, things like restaurants, cafes, attractions, things like that. And it's great saving these on a map actually, because then when you're exploring, you can kind of take a look and see, oh, hey, actually this cafe that I started is really close by. Why don't we pop in? And what's really cool is they recently introduced the ability to create lists that actually have specific icons. So now you can actually have a visual overview of all the different things you saved. So I definitely recommend making use of lists and also organizing them by category, and that way you have a cute little map that has the different emojis. And if you've been on my channel before, you know I love making custom Google Maps for different destinations. So if you're traveling to any major city in Europe, be sure to check out the other videos on my channel because they give an overview of the best things to do and also gives you a free nerdy Google map as well. So be sure to take advantage. Another cool thing is you can also save maps for offline use if you're not confident that you'll have internet. So the way that you do that is simply going on Google Maps and zooming in or out to the area that you want to save. And then you can just type in OK Maps and it's going to save that for offline use, which I think is really, really cool. And a final underrated way to use Google Maps is actually as a search engine. Surprise, surprise, it's owned by Google, so it does have pretty good search capabilities. A lot of the time, people will just go on Google Maps and type in a specific address that they're already looking for. But many people don't realize you can actually type in more general terms. So you can say, looking for cute coffee shops near me or near this museum, and it'll actually show you a bunch of different options. So this is a really good starting point for research, but I will say the results aren't 100% perfect just because usually they're pulling from reviews. So be sure to always double check reviews and explore different options. But if you're looking for quick recommendations in a pinch, Google Maps is actually a really valuable search engine as well. Now, all that said, if you're just traveling to one city, another thing I would really recommend is downloading the local public transport app for whichever city that you're going to, because most of the time this is going to give you the most accurate timetables and also allow you to do things like buy tickets and validate tickets as well. So most major cities in Europe will now have their own public transport authority that has their own app. So be sure to look into that as well, because that most of the time is going to be more accurate than Google Maps. All right, thanks so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if I missed any of your favorite apps, and be sure to like and subscribe for more travel videos just like this one. I'll see you next time. Bye.